What's up, everybody? Welcome to the channel. OG here, and I have the most important video for you when it comes to preparing for FC26, but this is for all of you who did not get the beta and only have FC25 to prepare for FC26 with, but you have to follow some very specific instructions, and it is more important than ever to do this because FC26 is an entirely different experience. Now listen, I am not talking about anything with regards to my experience within the beta. Fortunately, there is a bunch of content creators that had the chance to play FC26 early outside of the beta, and the catch-22 is none of them, including myself, can talk about the beta, but those guys who played the game before the beta are allowed to talk about their experiences. Therefore, there is a ton of information out there from their time playing FC26 that we are free to discuss, and this is absolutely huge for you guys. On top of that, having that footage to kind of reference when we're talking about all of these things that you need to do to prepare for FC26 for those of you who only have FC25 to play, right? So you can always reference that footage, since this year they released a ton of game footage already through their trailers, right? As opposed to just the cinematic stuff that doesn't really help you. Now, I'm on the screen because I want to make sure to point this out. If at all possible, order the Ultimate Edition. Is it too expensive? I can't really argue that. I can just say that the value this year is better than the value any other year for the $100 or $90 or whatever you pay, depending on if you have EA Play or whatever. This year, more than any other year, it has good value compared to just getting the standard edition. Now, the 4,600 FC points were always a good value, right? However, this year it's 6,000 FC points, so even better there. You still get the 7 days early access, but another change is no more heroes, right? Last year, if I'm not mistaken, it was a hero at the beginning of the game, but it wasn't even at the day one. You had to wait a little bit, get a hero, then later on, the hero would upgrade. This year, it's an icon, one of 15 from launch, which is absolutely huge. Now, everyone's going to picture themselves packing Ibra or R9 or Hullet, someone like that, because that's the dream, right? The thing is, vast majority of us will pack a lower level icon. We just have to prepare ourselves for it. But no matter what icon we get, considering we get them from launch, that will be absolutely huge for our clubs. So that too is a huge boost in value for the Ultimate Edition. Now, you also get the Season 1 Premium Pass, which gives you a bunch of extra things to build your team around, right? Then you get the additional player evolution slot, which means 2 evolutions at once. Once again, another bonus for the beginning of the year when you're trying to build your team up and go from those average gold cards, maybe even some silver cards, right, into a respectable team so you can start competing as soon as Champs goes out, which is usually, the second, third week, something like that. And so you can start, shooting up rivals and ranking up. No matter if you were grandfathered up from previous years, finishes, or you're starting at Division 10, maybe coming from eFootball or UFL, and you're looking to get up there with the best of them in FC. So all of these things within this Ultimate Edition can help you immensely at the start of the season. Then, of course, you get the 3 icon players for career, 5-star coach and manager career. The 3 icon part was the player career. The 5-star coach is if you do the manager mode. 5-star U Scout is also manager mode. Then you got the manager live challenge content, which is also manager mode. 1 archetype unlock consumable, that is, I believe, for player career, and then 2 times double XP consumables. You see that AXP at the end. I don't know which mode that is, but this is as you see there for the player career and manager career. You get several things there too. So if you're like me and you're looking to once again get involved in these modes, because for the past several years, EA Sports has pretty much not added anything. They've been all but dead and flat. Now, it was quite impressive what they did with both manager career and player career. We just have to decide how much time we're going to have, because there's quite a bit added gameplay-wise, game mode-wise, I should say, in Ultimate Team. But even without the player and manager career stuff, again, the value this year for the Ultimate Edition is higher than the past. You just have to decide if it's worth it to spend this much or just spend the regular amount for Ultimate Team. And I don't even remember the standard edition price. I think the difference is $30-$40, something like that. So I just wanted to point that out, and the more important part comes now. This is what it is going to take for you to turn on FC26 when you get it and hit the ground running. Okay, in years past, you could literally play the previous FC, take a break if you want to come in, turn on the next iteration of the game, and just hit the ground running, play like there's no difference, because there was barely any differences. The games were just barely different. They were glorified kit updaters and player updates from big transfers. That's it, right? Everything was a bunch of hoopla, for lack of a better term, with regards to big words of things that they added that really weren't making a difference. That is not the case with FC26. Again, I have to stress, I'm not talking about this from my experience playing the beta. We are not allowed to talk about that. I'm talking about this in the sense of what I call a loophole, with all these content creators that were able to play FC26 before the beta and allowed to talk about it, which there's a ton of different videos out there, a ton of different shorts. You compile all this information, and what you get is a great guide to how to use FC25 to properly prepare for FC26, so you're not shell-shocked day one trying to learn everything, while people, especially those who have the beta in Ultimate Edition, especially if you don't get that, you're going to be way behind if you don't follow these several setups, settings, the whole nine, to make sure you're preparing for FC26. The days of playing FC25 for the sake of competing, winning, and all that, those are done. You need every bit of time you have using these settings I'm about to tell you, and it should strictly be about getting better in certain areas. So we're going to dive into all that, right? First things first, though, on this journey to preparation time for FC26, we have to start with settings, okay? You want to go into settings, your game settings, and the reason why this is so important is because there's certain things that are going to allow you to make your experience closer to what you're going to experience in FC26, okay? As you know from those players who played the game before the beta, there is a ton of changes that make this a unique experience, and you can't get exactly FC26 from these changes, right? And settings in your tactics and all that. We'll go over that. You can't get it exact, but you can get it much closer, okay? So don't take this lightly, because it is like a brand new game. And you can see this too, kind of when you hear those that played the game early and they're allowed to talk about it, when you hear them talk about it, plus you kind of reference the footage they've released this year, which is unprecedented, by the way, where they actually show the footage instead of the cinematic nonsense. You can tell, right? Not only is this new authentic gameplay unique for those who are playing career mode, but the competitive gameplay is brand new too. It's not even like a change to the typical mode. It's like a brand new mode is how you should look at it. Same with authentic mode, a brand new mode. But for the sake of, going over preparation for Ultimate Team, we're going to stick to competitive gameplay and how to manipulate your settings and different things in 25 to make it at least semi-close to FC26. So, competitive preset, obviously. Precision shooting, of course. Gone are the days of assisted shooting and all the rats just memorizing and getting the timing down for time finishing, but not in the sense of using it skillfully with all their different shots. They memorize it in the sense of using it in one specific area. Usually this year, it was that 30-yard trivela or sometimes finesse shot from that certain angle across the goal to the back post, and the goalkeepers would make these goofy animations, and they wouldn't get the ball. And when you green time this shot, it made it almost an automatic goal. Right? It was the biggest nonsense ever. It never really was patched out. And so the beautiful thing is now those players aren't going to be able to just take that shot. There's no more green time finishing, which means they could take those goofy angle shots with assisted shooting, but with the goalie improvements, they're not going to have much luck, right? And all the way around with shooting, they improved the goalkeepers. They didn't break them, but it's going to take that extra little bit of aim, that extra little bit of effort to score goals. And so those of you using precision shooting already, or who get a head start and practice it now, you'll be miles ahead, right? These lower level players that have never used it, that are used to just spamming shots assisted with the green time, they're going to be in for a rude awakening. Make sure, whether you've been using it or not, you turn on precision shooting, okay? So you can practice. It's huge, huge, huge advantage for those of you who don't have the beta. If you have the beta, obviously you have the 26 you're playing it, and it's not the final copy, but at least you can prepare for exactly or way closer to what's happening, right? But don't worry, those of you playing FC25 to prepare, you will be fine. These settings do a pretty good job of mimicking where the game is going. Time finishing off, of course, that goes without explaining. Why have something on that they're removing? And especially, this is especially important to get rid of, like, you're so used to green timing everything, right? So what if in a game you're coming up and you want a regular shot? You don't want a low driven because it's going to cost you a goal. But you accidentally green time just from the muscle memory, and you hit a low driven shot when you didn't want one, right? Get time finishing out of your muscle memory, out of your sight, out of mind, the whole nine. Turn it off, period. Through pass assistance, lob through pass assistance, semi, all these that say the same. I'm just going to slightly go through. Ground pass assistance, cross assistance, lob pass assistance, all assisted, okay? Pass receiver lock. Make sure this is late. A lot of you have been doing this, especially if you followed when I went over the settings before. But this year, more than ever, you can lock onto your player like down to the last frame before they receive the ball, right? And you can adjust or change whatever commands you want up to that very last frame. And this kind of adds to that, right? The pass receiver is locked as late as possible, around the same approximate time as when the ball is kicked, which isn't really the case, considering like you can register your pass receiver lock on late. This ties into the fact that now more than ever you can hold off on what command you want to do to the last frame when your player is receiving the ball, right? So many of you have already been using pass receiver lock late, but essentially the pass receiver is just locked on as late as possible, right? So add this to the fact that you can now have that one frame passing. You can literally pass the ball down to the last frame, and that will be a perfect setting for you to make sure that you're not locked on too early. You're trying to make a decision change and you can't do it, right? Precision pass sensitivity, normal. Auto clearance is off. Clearance assistance directional. Defending, tactical defending is an option. However, I still say go advanced defending. Now, tactical defending, you don't have to make the choice. You just press the tackle button and the game will choose based on the scenario. I still say you go advanced defending. Here is why. There's going to be times, right, where you want that shoulder charge to kind of block players out, especially if you time your run where you can get right in front of the player, even if they're going to try to physical dribble on you, right? If you time it right, you can get around that. Also, there's going to be times when you want those standing tackles. And obviously slide tackles too, but this doesn't concern that. No matter what, you can slide tackle. This is more for either just pressing O right? In tactical defending, and it will choose the best tackle, or in advanced defending where you press X for a shoulder charge or O for tackle. Why not go advanced defending, right? That way you have that choice in your hands every single time, and you just got to get good at what decision to make, right? It's part of the skill gap. So I would go advanced defending here and really work on when you're going to shoulder charge, right? When you're going to commit to a tackle, because both can be great, but both can hurt you bad. If you go to shoulder charge and you're not in a good spot, you're just going to bounce off the defender. They're going to blow by you, right? If you go for a tackle and you're in an awkward spot, your player's going to sort of make this goofy lunge movement and you're going to run right by them, right? Or your opponent's going to run right by you, I should say. So I would stick to advanced defending. That way you can work on the timing of both your shoulder charge and your tackles, and you are the one deciding those. Pass block assistance on, auto switching on air balls and loose balls, auto switching move assistance low or none. Okay, this is after you switch to a player when they are already in, on the move. This will allow you to take over that player and they'll keep running in their direction just for a short amount of time. The reason I suggest going low instead of none, but none is obviously the only other option, is because you don't want to take over the player and for too long they're locked in going in one direction when you wanted to change that direction. But for two, I say you don't do none, because it's easy to take over a player who's already moving in one direction, and you sort of forget that, right? And you mess up whatever they're doing. So I suggest you do low so you can switch, and then by the time you get your energy focused on, where you want to go, where you're deciding as you switch to that player, you have that little bit of that split little time for the player to run the right direction, so you can get kind of organized, if you will, right? Organized mentally for where your player's going, where you want to go with that player. So auto switch move assistance, choose low. Right stick switching, classic. Right stick switching reference, player relative. Both of these should never be touched. Sometimes players mess with them. It's nonsense, right? Yes, you just want to flick your right stick and it'll go to the very next player that you flick towards. And yes, you want the right stick switching to be player relative, not ball relative, because the ball's always moving, right? People talk about maybe using that. No, the ball's always moving. I get that if you wanted to add this extra work to figuring this out, you could just go player relative, where the player you control acts as a center point of reference anytime you right stick switch. Okay? So again, right stick switching classic, switching reference, player relative. Right stick switching sensitivity, right? I moved this one up to 8 in 25. So you see here, just a sensitivity for right stick switching, whether it's classic, adaptive, or rotation. The higher the sensitivity, the more the game will respect your directional input when selecting the next player, right? The lower the sensitivity, the more likely the game is to select a player closer, even if the R direction is not pointed directly at them, right? But the higher you go, okay, the more it's going to be precise with your movements and how far you push in the whole nine, okay? You see there, the higher the sensitivity, the more the game will respect your directional input when selecting the next player. So it's more precise, and that's exactly what I wanted. But for the start of the game, especially if you're not sure where this lands, where you should have it and you're just kind of guessing, I would start with 5 and either go down or up from there. It's as simple as that. Start right smack dab in the middle, and you can always increase and decrease based on how your right stick switching is going. If it's going just fine, don't even worry about this setting, right? If you feel like it's not accurate enough, you go higher, right? If you feel like it's almost too accurate with the direction you're pushing and you don't want that, you want it to get the player in the general direction, we'll go lower here. So there you go. Next player switching, of course, is classic. Reaction time calibration on. This is just when the next player switch indicator is turned on, an icon appears over the head of the player you'll switch to when pressing L1. This icon updates constantly based on the match situation. In some instances, the icon can change during the natural reaction window that exists between you thinking about player switching and actually pressing L1. The reaction time calibration takes this into account, switching you to the player that was indicated when you initially thought about switching. This setting has no impact on the right stick switching or the speed with which inputs are processed. Reaction time calibration can be adjusted using, as you see here. So, you see here, let's read this again. When you're L1 switching, this icon updates constantly based on the match situation, right? Because as the game's constantly moving, because football's a constantly moving game, so too is the players that you would go to if you press L1, right? It's always that player close to you, next to you. It's constantly changing. So what this is saying is the reaction time calibration, if it's off, whoever's next to you that would be that L1 switch when you finally decide to press the button, that's who it's going to. This essentially corrects it as to when, the timing as to when he pressed that button compared to who's next to him now is different. We're going to the player back with when he pressed that button. It actually can make a world of difference, right? If you have this off, there's going to be times where you're switching, and you're going to, first of all, by the way, I typically switch with my right stick, not L1, the right stick flick. But that's here nor there, especially those of you who use L1 still. If you have this off, there's going to be times when you go to switch your players, and you go, not him, because by the time the game registered your command, that player you switched to had already changed, right? Not all the time, but sometimes. It depends on the situation in the game and where players are standing and how much movement there is. But if you have this on, you will increase your chances of switching to the right player. It's as simple as that. So keep that on. Reaction time calibration, once again, the higher the sensitivity, right? The reaction time calibration, the higher the sensitivity, the more accurate it will be as to what player was, the right player for L1 switching, okay? The lower it is, right, the more general it will be. It's as simple as that. This one may be a little more difficult for you to understand, but that's all these are, right? The sensitivity is just when you're pressing L1, okay, it's how accurate it is as to, you pressed it exactly this time. This player is who you meant to switch to, not this player, this player. That's all this is. So again, start with 5. Go up if you want it more exact. Go lower if you want it more. Generally, you don't have to be too exact with who you want to switch to, and it just, gets the player closest to when you press the button. Simple as that. So start with 5 there. Player lock is on. Of course, from the players who've played, not the beta, the game before that, they say it's not as you don't need to use it as much, which is always a good thing. They improve player movement and all that. However, it's also apparently not as slick, meaning you can't just click, move. It's got a little bit of a delay to it, and I think that's to make it more realistic. It got to the point in 25 where players were just constantly click, move, and it was very unrealistic looking. It took away from the rhythm of the game. Now, you need things like player lock, L1, R1 when you don't have a infrastructure for proper movement based on player IDs, right? Based on play styles, stuff like that. The movement isn't proper. So you need ways to manipulate their runs. And that's where player lock comes in. If you haven't learned it yet, I strongly suggest you learn it. There's going to be those games where you just can't get any creative movement going. It's a lost cause, right? And in those games, you're going to want player lock, right? Where your players just can't seem to make good runs. You can't seem to connect with them making good runs. Player lock, L1, R1 with the directional changes. These things are all important. Dribbling, contextual dribbling off. Goalkeeper save assistance assisted. Controller preferences. Analog sprint, trigger effect, and user vibration feedback. All of these off. You don't want any of this. Analog sprint, I know they have it in eFootball where you can go different levels of your sprint. And I get where it makes sense for real life, but I'm telling you, turn it off in FC. Not important at all. Trigger effect, you absolutely want off. You don't want any resistance for sprint jockey or shield when you press, L2 or R2, or L2 and R2, I should say. And then the user vibration feedback, you don't want your controller vibrating around when you score or do whatever. So all these are off. So there you have it. The gameplay part, these settings will help you get as close to FC26 based on all the players that played the game before the beta that we're allowed to talk about and just put all this information out. I just compiled it and turned it into exactly what you need to do to prepare for FC26. Now we go to the camera, another important thing with your preparation, right? Now, as you see here, there's one thing we don't have, and that is this new unique camera just for Ultimate Team, okay? But that's okay, because we can manipulate the camera to be closest to what the new camera in FC26 is going to be like, because they showed it to us on footage, right? Then the players who got to play the game before the beta and can talk about it have told us quite a bit. So in order to prepare, there's no camera angle quite like it. That's why they brought it in. It's unique. It adds in the atmosphere. This new Ultimate Team only camera adds in the atmosphere while doing a good job zooming to the right place, meaning not so close where it's great for 1v1 defending and attacking, terrible for seeing all your options on the pitch, right? Then if you're zoomed too far out, it's great for seeing all your options, but you can't really see all the ins and outs you need to see when manually, individually defending or attacking. So the new camera does bring like the best of both worlds. However, I would still argue if you can sacrifice that like feeling of immersion with the crowd, which they do a great job with that. If you can sacrifice that, I still believe co-op is the best. And as far as preparing, we're actually going to use co-op, meaning this is the closest you're going to get to that new camera angle anyway. And some would argue this is even better. Therefore, you can practice with this, then go into 26 and have a pretty good idea of the angle. But most importantly, you have a backup plan with co-op. And now you can go in and test out the new game mode for yourself, right? Sorry, the new game mode, the new camera for yourself. Okay? So, to prepare, we're going to go co-op for single player, custom down here, height 12, zoom 0. Alright? And that will help you, like I said, get used to a pretty close angle to what to expect in FC26. Not exact, but close enough. And that will do it for these settings. You should be using players around this. Maybe even this. The only reason you can't go to the mid-level and lower-level golds like you're going to go to an FC to prepare, which is what I always tell you, right? The reason why you can't use those players you're about to use is because all the other teams are going to be just way too high-rated. So you're going to have to strengthen your team, like to this level, 88s, 89s, 90s around there, but still higher, but still way under, the footies cards and like all the top perfect rank cards, right? So you want to fill your team with these type of players. Now in squad battles, sometimes you'll face gold lower rated teams. You can then maybe change your team to gold just for that, and it's worth it. Whatever experience you get with those players that aren't excellent at every stat like every footies is, the more time you get spent with more regular players, the more time you spend using them, the better, right? So start choosing cards like this and actually putting them in the lineup no matter how bad it hurts to bench that top ranked player. Now, if you're not quite done and you want to stick to FC25, you could either come in, train for FC26, go back and play FC25, right? Or you can pick out a day where you start, training for FC26 and kind of sit this one out for now. But either way, you're going to want to prepare, right? You're going to want to give yourself ample time. So maybe another week and you get one more champs in just to end off, FC25 with a bang. But no matter who you are, no matter when it is, I strongly urge you to use these lower ranked players. It will help you out tremendously. So, you got the first part of your FC25 manipulation to make it close to FC26, or at least as close as you can for preparation purposes, right? We've already done the settings. Now, we've also talked about the lowering your player ratings, right? For example, putting in these two that I just packed from rewards. So remember, you get a lot of this type of fodder. If you've used it for SBCs, start getting some more, but not for SBCs this time. For your starting lineup to get that lower ranked team and get used to it. You got to swallow your pride and you can't worry about the competition part. All right? That's why for many, if you can do it and it's still a challenge, make it to where you're at a bit of a disadvantage if for those of you who maybe you're on world class or even professional, whatever level you are. Don't go in and just whoop the opponents, right? If you're playing AI, you're less likely to get that competitive, oh, I got to win thing and avoid your whole game plan. So I would stay playing squad battles at the highest level. It still gives you a chance, but you're definitely getting outmatched, okay? This will help you improve immensely. Just whooping teams every time in squad battles won't do anything. Just playing some nonsense against some rat and not really playing good football, that won't help either. So, you're going to want to do stuff like this, lower your team rating down. We talked about that. And now we're going to talk about the actual play styles that are going to help you better emulate, FC26. So the first one is all these players up here, you want them to have at least tiki-taka, preferably tiki-taka plus, okay? Why is this? Because based on, again, the players that played the game before the beta and were allowed to put all this information out, talked about how much quicker the passing is. The fact that down to the last frame you can make your decision. You are going to be able to start pinging the ball around, which is huge, right? For us type of players, this channel type of players, this community, the type of players that we have, we are the type that are going to love this new setting. Being able to pass circles around our opposition has to have skilled defending to stop us. You can't get any better than that. So to emulate that much faster movement, not that lethargic, slowing the ball feel, Tiki-Taka Plus is the best, right? However, if you can just do Tiki-Taka within your attack, go for those Tiki-Taka players, without a doubt. If you have a ton of coins saved up and you're not sure how to use them and you don't have Tiki-Taka Plus players, go buy the Tiki-Taka Plus players, right? Specifically for your attack, but the more you can get on your team, the better, right? For learning and understanding the style of play that we've been yearning for. Next, you do not want players with the anticipate playstyle at all, whether it's playstyle plus or playstyle. I know that's harder to find, especially with these higher ranked players. You might have to go lower rank for your defenders to find it, but you don't want anticipate at all because it gives you a false sense of security with regards to your shoulder charge. We talked about already using advanced defending, but we want you to have to time your shoulder charges to win the ball back, right? And anticipate allows you more freely to press X and still win the ball, as opposed to timing it correctly so you don't just bounce off the attacker who then will run through if you mistime your shoulder charge. Not only that, but it forces you to use standing tackle, which you also have to time correctly. Otherwise, you will just kind of lunge in and once again miss the ball. Therefore, go for defenders without the anticipate play style. Make sure the raccoon is not on your defenders. Can't make it any more clear than that, and you will be helped greatly. And last but not least, the low driven shot. They introduced this in FC25, and the way they did it is if you had the low driven playstyle or low driven playstyle plus, you would tap the shoot button and get this super accurate, low driven shot. Now what they changed it for in FC26 is you can do low driven on any of your shots. A finesse, low driven. A power shot, low driven. A regular shot, low driven. Everything but a chip shot for obvious reasons. Okay? Now what does this mean for training, since we don't have the ability to press that shoot button twice and get a low driven? First off, just like with Anticipate Plus, we have to make sure our players don't have this low driven plus. We don't want to get rewarded for just tapping that shoot button. If you do this in 26, or get this muscle memory going, you're going to hit little worm burners straight to the goalie. So you want to try to get players without this. And then, because time finishing is turned off, which means you won't be penalized when you press the shoot button twice, when you go to shoot anything but a finesse shot, but a chip shot, you want to press the shoot button for a second time. Now the shot won't turn into a low driven, but it will allow you to practice and get that muscle memory in your head. You just got to think when you do that, imagine, okay, that ball's going to go low. Okay? So that's how you'll practice. Utilizing the time finishing turned off and not taking advantage of just a tap of the shoot button. You're powering up everything. You're just pressing the shoot button a second time before, the player's foot connects with the ball. Pretty straightforward, pretty simple, but huge with regards to training and getting better and getting all this muscle memory that has been created through FC25, getting all that out of your head, right? Because once you get the low drivens right, once you actually get the defensive part right, and then you start connecting all your passes, you work on the quickness of your passes, not losing the ball as you try to keep up with the speed of play. The sky's the limit for where you can go. You're going to get out of it what you put into it. So hopefully this was helpful to you guys. If it was, please smash the like button. Please subscribe to my channel. As always, keep grinding, keep having fun, and don't forget to check out my Discord where everything FC26 will be covered for our entire community, our entire team. No more stressing out, no more fear of missing out. And if you want early content and other perks from YouTube, you can check out those memberships as well. All of them low price, and again, worth their weight in gold. So, I will see you on the next one. Peace out.